injury in the first couple of games of the season. And, not discrediting all the other O-lines, but Kent State had a really good line on rushing wise. And, it's not a stressing thing. It's more of just a look-back thing, something we can look back at so we know what to work on. Because we got a lot to work on. We got a young defensive line. We got players who are being looked at, like Jalen Carter, going to the NFL and stuff like that. And we got players under him, like me, Bill Norton, of course, Bear Alexander, Ty Dawkins. We just got a lot of players that's being looked at too. And so we just want to work on what we need. So like when we go back into the lab, we're just going to basically just get to where we need to, basically back to the basics. Because obviously Kent State wanted to run the ball, obviously. So we just need to work on that.
Thank you, Bear. No problem.
Nazir, how do you think you executed better today? I mean, you let a lot of balls through the middle and scored 22 points. I know Kirby and everyone reiterated that this is a really good football team, but that's got to feel something too, letting up 22 points.
This is how we feel we executed. One thing I can say is that we didn't execute to our top standard, but that's okay. That's why we have games like this. But fortunately for us, we came up with the win. But we know we can look back at our mistakes and, preparing for next week, we can look at this game and say, okay, this is what we need to work on better. And basically, we're just going to focus on getting back into the lab and going back to the basics, like I told him earlier. And, we didn't want them to rush for 90 yards. You know what I mean? We didn't want them getting through our gaps and stuff like that. But we're not always going to have good games, and we're always not going live up to the standard that we want to. But that's one thing we can't look at as is our mistakes. And so what I can say is that for the next week, we got Missouri. We're just going to work on what we didn't really do our best in this game and just move on from there.
Yeah, it seemed like the tempo seemed to get to y'all a little bit this week. What did you see there when it came to the tempo?
One thing with the tempo is that me personally, I didn't really feel it as much until I got on the sideline and Coach Trey Scott was telling us that they was going tempo, and I realized that a little bit in the second half. We worked on that all week, and they was just telling us over and over again, and we seen that today. And so basically, when they started running tempo, we just had to react differently than we used to. React differently than we did in the first half when they wasn't really running good tempo. And obviously with Kent State, they was down, so they was going to try to get some good plays on us and stuff like that. Wasn't really expecting them to get the ball in. No one in our end zone is a model that we stand behind, and so it was a little bit upsetting, for them to get that rushing touchdown, but it's okay. Like I told them earlier, we're just gonna get back in the lab. We're gonna work on tempo plays because we got some teams coming up who run the same type of offense, like Tennessee. Missouri probably does it a little bit, and that's one thing we're gonna get better at.
So this was upbeat all standards. Are you watching it? You're kind of hanging around. How frustrating is that? Obviously, everybody's kind of trying to have it blow them out.
I'm like, some of us are probably frustrated, and that's just the nature of the game. But one thing we do follow behind is composure, and so most of us were composed. Obviously, some big plays was going throughout the game from Kent State. We didn't have a rushing touchdown on us and stuff like that. They put 22 points on the board. There's a lot of frustration, but we all just stayed together. We all trusted each other, so just us being composed as a team, helped us get to that win.
You're worried about, it didn't really matter at this point. You've been number one. There's chances that this you can come up. More do you think about that, or do you don't care what you think about the rankings?
I'm like, we don't even care too much about the rankings because we're more of a team where we focus on us. It's always a we thing, We're always focused on the development of us as a team. No matter where we are in the rankings, we always just want to beat the next team. It doesn't matter how many rushing yards we get in the game, how many passing yards we get in the game, how many TFLs, how many tackles, how many sacks, and stuff like that. We're always just worried about us just developing us as a team. So when we going out there, we always living up to the standard that we want to beat these guys. No matter where we are in the ranking, anybody we face or compete with, there's always one goal, and that's to win.
What's the biggest takeaway for you coming out of this game as far as what the defense needs to work on?
Overall, like I told them, we didn't play up to our standard. But, we've seen worse games. And so for us, like I said, for us to get the win was great. It was fortunate for us. Wasn't a bad game defensively. We wanted to get more takeaways than we usually get. But just coming up with one was something that we appreciate. We always just look back at it. And for my young guys who also got in, like Barry Alexander, shout out to him. He stood on 10. He went out there, basically just went back to the basics and stuff like that, because to be a freshman going into a game like that, it's a lot to handle, and he handled his own. Shout out Bill Noren. Doesn't really play as much, but he went out there, he did his thing, and just to look back on the game, defensively, we played better. We played good, but we could have played better. That's
How
all.
would you assess how the defensive line played, especially with Jalen not being able to play?
Just with Jalen being down, there's another model that we stand behind is next man up. And so a lot of guys who just knew that they was going to play probably felt nervous, probably didn't at the same time. Just going out there and like with Jalen not being out there, we just had to have that mentality that, all right, look, one of my brothers are down, so I got to come out here and perform. So me and Zelo being up there and starting, it was something new that we didn't obviously see earlier in the season. But we was ready. We prepared for it in the spring, in the summer. We prepared. We always did. And so going out there and just playing back to how our standard is with the defensive line wise, which is striking blocks and getting penetration on the QB, stunting defensively. We just always look back at those basics. So whenever one of our brothers is down, we're all ready.
You may have talked about